one of the most overused terms nowadays, and actually for a long time, is sustainability. It is even absurd sometimes to see every other business using some form of this term in their names, from street cleaning and waste collection companies to petrochemical, pharmaceutical, and cement giants. I hate to spoil the next series of videos, but I have to tell you in advance that only small fraction of these organizations claiming to practice sustainability are actually doing so. And moreover, we see that many practices and policies that are masked by sustainability to generate revenue may actually pose risk on nations and hinder their prosperity by mispracticing sustainable principles. But before I delve deeper into this topic, let's follow the set traditions in my videos and first understand the origins of the term sustainability. Dictionaries define sustain as to strengthen or support physically or mentally. For example, we might say his beliefs sustained him through the years. It can also mean to cause or allow something to continue for a certain period. For instance, we might say he seems to find it difficult to sustain relationships. Additionally, it can refer to keeping something alive, as in the phrase, the soil in this part of the world is not rich enough to sustain a large population. When something is able to be maintained at a certain rate or level, we can call it sustainable, such as in the phrase, sustainable living standards. It can also mean to be able to uphold or defend, as in the phrase, sustainable definitions of good educational practice. Finally, it can refer to something that is able to continue over a period of time, as in the phrase, that sort of extreme diet is not sustainable over a long time. All of this information can easily be found on the internet. As a non-native speaker of English, I may not have a complete understanding of the language, but from what I can comprehend, the word sustainability may have both positive and negative meanings. How? Let me explain. While everyone is happy to sustain their health when it is at its peak, sustaining an income level may not be met with the same level of enthusiasm, as people often strive for better income over time. Thus, sustainability is positive only when it is not a synonym of stagnancy. I appreciate the importance of sustaining forestry around the world, but I also recognize the need to make renovations in my house to update it with the latest technology and keep it comfortable. At the same time, it may seem odd to renovate or modernize cultural heritage sites. So, is my limited understanding of the English language to blame? Or are there other reasons for the questionable benefits of being completely sustainable? The answer may lie in further research into the origins of the terminology in social and environmental economics, which has a long history. Some scholars insist that sustainability as a terminology that means natural resources preservation was first introduced by Carlowitz in 1713 in his book on forest science. He emphasized the importance of timber, stating that it should be used carefully to maintain a balance between growth and harvesting, allowing for perpetual use. He also suggested that our economy should be organized to prevent scarcity and promote the growth of young trees in areas where timber is harvested. In October 1987, the Oxford Press published a report of the World Commission of Environment and Development, or WCED, titled Our Common Future. And this report was in recognition of Gro Harlem Brundtland, the former Norwegian Prime Minister and the chair of the World Commission of Environment and Development. It began with a clear and powerful definition of sustainable development, which is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. The report focuses on two key concepts: the concept of needs, in particular the essential needs of the world's poor, to which overriding priority should be given, and the idea of limitation imposed by the state of technology and social organization on the environment's ability to meet present and future needs. One chapter of the report was dedicated to discussing sustainable development in detail and providing further clarity on the definition. If we were to simplify, the report introduces a terminology that consists of two words: sustainability and development, which means that we improve the ecosystem to meet the needs which are growing themselves and becoming more demanding. The report clearly states that sustainable development is the one that is able to eliminate poverty and grants access to the technology required to improve the social and environmental components of the ecosystem. The next milestone was the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which took place from June 3rd to 14th, 1992 in Rio de Janeiro. The conference's Annex 1 of its declaration in its first principle states that human beings are at the center of concerns for sustainable development. In Switzerland, the Federal Statistical Office, FCO, oversees the monitoring of sustainable development projects, which is an indicator system that tracks the country's progress towards sustainable development goals, also known as MONET, M-O-N-E-T. This project has modified the definition of sustainable development, incorporating key elements such as justice, intra- and intergenerational equity, maintenance of options, meeting the needs and maintenance of biodiversity, and as a result, MONET proposes the following definition: sustainability development means ensuring dignified living conditions with regard to human rights by creating and maintaining the widest possible range of options for freely defining life plans. The principle of fairness among and between present and future generations should be taken into account in the use of environmental, economic, and social resources. Putting these needs into practice entails comprehensive protection of biodiversity in terms of ecosystem, species, and genetic diversity, all of which are vital foundations of life. Since then, scientists and thought leaders have come up with many definitions of sustainable development. Scholars confirmed that by 1994, there were more than 80 definitions and interpretations, all fundamentally sharing the core concept of WCED's definition. And by mid-90s, there were well over 100 definitions. And of course, any discussion or research on sustainability and sustainable development is incomplete without mentioning the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development, which is a United Nations resolution adopted on September 25th, 2015 by 193 member states. The agenda includes 17 sustainable development goals that are widely recognized, and a careful study of this document leads to the same conclusion: human beings are the center, access to all tools and resources to guarantee prosperity and eliminate poverty, maintaining all the ecosystem elements to serve current and future generations. I believe that the information presented thus far can help us now dispel some common myths surrounding sustainability. First, it is sustainable development that we should pursue, not sustainability. Second, sustainable development is a dynamic process. The truth is that sustainable development was never about establishing numerical target or performance indicators, despite the pressure from different groups to insist otherwise. Third, there is no standard path that must be followed for sustainable development. It is only the final destination that is commonly approved, and any proposed method must be carefully evaluated to ensure its suitability and applicability to the relevant culture, country, region, or specific geography. Fourth, sustainable development is not solely focused on environment, but rather on the well-being of the human. The ultimate goal of sustainable development is to improve prosperity, provide freedom of choice, and enhance the quality of life for all and each. This is a little bit complicated for a simple social media video, I know. And this is why I was working on a hypothetical life example to explain the principles of sustainable development, and I believe I have finally found one. Now, imagine that you inherited your family's house from your father and you have been living in it as your own for the past 30 years. When you first moved in, the house was equipped with furniture, appliances, and other amenities that met your needs according to the living standards of that time. It was also suitable for you to move in, rent out, or sell without any extra financial requirements. But you have chosen the option to live in the house. However, as the time passed, you had to replace the fireplace, ventilation, old stove, and a single compartment fridge with modern ones that meet the demand of the modern life. The facade and roof also required maintenance and occasional replacement. Additionally, you had to consistently take care of the front and the backyards to keep them green and clean. And when you got married, you possibly had to upgrade the house to accommodate your growing family, and you may even have added more parking space to the garage. This was a common practice among your neighbors as well. And as time passes, you find yourself passing the key to your child, allowing him to choose an option related to what to do with the house further. But it is now a completely different house. Do you agree? If you compare to the one you moved in. And now your child has the opportunity to choose from three equally beneficial options, thanks to the time and efforts you invested in the house. The value of the house has significantly increased since you first received the keys, resulting in higher sales value and rental price. This is also due to the fact that your neighbors have taken care of their own properties, making the entire community a prime location and a first choice for living. So, how is this example relevant? Let me explain. If the house represented the country you live in and the neighborhood represented our planet, with your father being generation A, you being generation B, and your son generation C, then this scenario would serve as a model for sustainable development. Your father, which is generation A, took care of his country and passed it to the son, which is generation B, in a state that allowed for decent quality of life, according to the standards of that time. Generation B, you, not only maintained the house in good condition, but also continuously improved it to ensure high quality of life for the family, and also made sure that the house was suitable for the future generations, providing additional resources, furniture, and appliances to ensure their health and comfort. And when the time came, your child, which is generation C, inherited the house with the same three options, but with some differences. It was the same house in the same location, but now it met the new standards of living, with more space and updated systems, making it more valuable than before. This added value was also a result of the responsible behavior of your neighborhood, the other countries, as they too worked to keep their own houses and yards clean and up to date. Together, you all kept your streets clean and peaceful, making your neighborhood, the planet, a desirable place to live in. In addition, to complete the picture for you. There are important aspects of sustainable development that we can extract from this example that may not have been immediately apparent. First, in the example provided, no standard improvement or modernization action plan was required, and each family chooses its own way of keeping the house and the facade up to date. The variety is an essential part of creating the beauty of the neighborhood. Second, the families in the neighborhood are not supposed to be of the same income level. Thus, the starting point of Generation B was different for each. This means that each family has taken its own approach, and while some chose to live in the house, others rented it to improve their income, and the rest might have sold their properties. Third, the level of sophistication in each house depended on the family priorities. In one case, a family with more children may have decided to invest more in the children's education and healthcare, and use only the remaining amount of resources to renovate and maintain the house. In other cases, one family may have chosen to be independent of the electrical grid and to move to solar and wind energy to electrify the house. The common denominator is that all the houses ended up in a better condition compared to the starting point. Fourth, however, the whole neighborhood eventually gains the reputation of the first choice location to live and raise children in. Some houses are smaller than others. Some are single-stored, while others are multi-stored. Some houses gain their value from being adjacent to the lake, others from being closer to the neighborhood central park. But the rest may have value because they are located in the commercial part of the neighborhood, near the market and the shopping center. Fifth and last, none of the families living in the neighborhood neglected any of the main pillars of the social life. However, each family has chosen its own balance based on its own priorities, meaning none of the families spent its entire income and time only to renovate the house or on education and healthcare. The difference between families' decision is only related to the proportions of the attention given to each of the daily life matters.